The offense may have recovered and made a statement today, while the injury report is really starting to get concerning and a bit of a problem. Um, DA talked about that a little bit in his press conference, along about other things. Also, Isaiah Foskey, Alontae Taylor, and the usual practice reports. So, got a lot to do. Let's get started. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So, normally I do like the practice reports at the end of the video, but I feel like we got to bump this one up to the top of the list because I'm feeling like the injuries are going to be a problem. So we'll just cover that first. But also, players of the day kind of was mostly on the offensive side. So they had by all accounts, a bit of a shaky start, but recovered nicely and started getting their pride back a little bit after the last two or three practices. And one thing that plays in, they made another roster move this morning. They released quarterback Nathan Peterman. No surprise there because everybody knew that 2 and 3 battle is Rattler and Hayner. More on that a little later. And they signed Samson Nakua, wide receiver, brother Puka Nakua, the great rookie receiver the Rams had last year. DA talked about it a little bit. Part of it was, bigger physical receiver. And DA said he, had a good day blocking, whatever that's worth. And we'll come back to what DA had said about it at the end because the practice report is still rather long. No Demario Davis, Marshawn Lattimore, Kendre Miller. That's getting to be a problem. Cedric Wilson, Equanimous St. Brown, Nick Saldivari, Shane Lemieux, and Trajan Jeffcoat. Juwan Johnson was seen. Technically, he wasn't there either, but he was seen again after practice, which he's been doing the last couple of practices, doing some post-practice work. So got to kind of get the feeling that he's got to be getting close to coming back. The good news, Brian Brzee came back today in a limited capacity, and wide receiver Jermaine Jackson left. I didn't see anything on Bub Means, but the fact that the last two roster additions came at the expense of cutting a backup tight end and a backup quarterback to sign two receivers leads me to believe maybe they just missed the fact that Bub Means wasn't out there, or maybe he was. I don't really know, but they're starting to stack up receivers. Reason why. And real quick, as a note, Jake Hayner, had dermatologist or doctor found skin cancer, I believe, on his face. He's still been practicing because it apparently sounded like it wasn't necessarily a life-threatening issue, but it was an issue. And they were going to schedule a procedure. The Saints are off Tuesday. He's going to be off Monday, so he will miss practice. And that's why, because they're going to do a procedure on him, but he should be good to go by Wednesday. So they did mention that today, that was upcoming. But with Dennis Allen, acknowledged that, and specifically about adding these wide receivers the last 2 days is, and probably earlier in camp, doing the same thing with linemen when they had to do the reshuffle there because there was a rash of injuries at linemen. Right now, there's a rash at wide receiver, and he's acknowledging that it's slowly becoming an issue because what happens is as the room gets depleted and you're losing more and more guys and they're leaving practice and they're not coming back, you start needing the remaining guys have to take extra reps to cover the guys that aren't there that are leaving because you've had just a big rash of injuries where they're leaving, which leads to them wearing down, which increases their chances to eventually get injured and wind up right next to the guys that you're already missing. It's like a vicious cycle he talked about. And I'm just worried about the sheer number of guys that hit it and we haven't seen, a week or more anywhere. One of them we're going to talk about. Like I said, Kendre Miller is getting to be a problem. This is why getting into the play and the players of the day, because we're going to start with the offense. We're going to start with the offensive running game because by all accounts, it actually has been looking good. Most of the dings and problems the offense was having was in pass blocking mostly, but in the passing game itself. But the run game has looked fairly solid, and apparently it did again today. Um, that they had another strong game. It was noted that they're talking about you can see a drop off, and this is why I think getting Kendrick Miller healthy and back out there soon is getting to be really important. There was some talk about after Alvin, the remaining backs, there seems to be a rather significant gap between them. Although it Jordan Mims had another good practice today, so it appears he's one of them that's finally stepping forward and closing that gap and trying to increase the possibility of good production out of the running backs. And he seems to be a fit into this scheme, and does a you know does a very good job of fitting in, knowing what he needs to do and being able to carry it out. Um, he also today had somebody noted that he had a big run for a TD off a pitch that was off a fake of a jet sweep, and he housed a pretty decent run on that. Also, Alvin had a big run that was noted. Believe Matthew Paris, because I think he might have had a clip of it on Twitter. Um, but basically, that Alvin had a big run in the running game, and that Penning was apparently the lead blocker on there that sprung it open for Alvin, which that's good to hear. I'm really want to hear about the positives building in compared to the negatives we were dealing with the last few days. And I did a video earlier about offensive line having to win some one-on-ones. Well, apparently today they started doing some of that, and it's like, well, okay, that's a good sign. A little different set of scenario because it started in red zone drills, and apparently it started tough for the offense. It sounded like they were headed for another bad day at BlackRock, but they slowly started kind of finding their footing, so to speak, and then as practice progressed, they started, I guess, for lack of a better word, fighting back and standing their ground and standing up and pushing back. And by the end of the day, the whole progression by the time practice ended, there's a lot of in attendance going, look, it was a really solid day by the offensive line, especially compared to what happened the last two or three. Um, Fuaga was mentioned specifically because I mean, he was one of the guys having a rough day Wednesday along with the rest of them. But they said he especially responded nicely today. Looked more consistent than he had like on Wednesday, and he was winning one-on-one reps. And there was a clip on Twitter that was getting sent around of a one-on-one rep with him and Chase Young, and he stonewalled Chase Young on that rep. And I'm like, that's what that's what needs to happen. Need to see more of that, but we need to see it all along the offensive line. And might note, McCoy was back at practice today, and the offense started looking better. So just saying. In the passing game, apparently it was a lot of play action work today, and all three quarterbacks are drawing praise from the media and people in attendance going, they all look sharp today. Today was a day where Rattler ran with the twos and Hainer ran with the threes, and some of the media present was going, they all look good, but Hainer might have actually had his best day at training camp so far. That was a couple people noted that going, he looked really, really solid. And they all hit big plays off of play action. Carr to Olave for a big gain. Carr to a wide open Taysom Hill on the sideline. Like, well, I'd love to see a lot of that this season, getting Taysom wide open on the sideline, trucking upfield off of play action. I'm sorry, it wasn't Hainer. Rattler had a big connection with Dallin Holker for a touchdown today. And Holker, I think all accounts, I don't think I've seen any other really names, but they were like he was the dude of the day in camp. Apparently, he once again had a great day in the passing game. And we're going to talk. Da talks about him a little bit in addition to what he talked about the tight end group as a whole yesterday. But he also had some good blocks today. Noted. One was a block that sprung Shaheed on a pass. So good downfield effort there. And there was another one that said, and I don't know if it was a running play or if he was in protection, what was going on, but he shoved it was noted that he had a block where he shoved Carl Granderson to the ground. So I'm like, ooh, that's good. Really want to see more of that. And the defense, the only thing they're really saying about them is, yeah, they weren't as sharp as they were the last 3 days, but apparently the defensive line was still pretty solid, which I'm also happy to hear because kind of right behind the offensive line is my biggest worry and concern. Defensive line was probably number two. Um, and they did get Brzee back for some limited action today, which probably also helped. But the name that kept popping up was Nathan Shepard. Seemed to have had a really, really good day on the interior, which we need to hear because both Saunders and Shepard are gonna have to step it up some, along with Brzee from their play last year on the interior, especially against the run. So we get that going. That's going to help out a lot, also. Cam Jordan uh, was noticed, and there are some clips that I saw on Twitter coming out of some of his one-on-one work and all, where he was getting reps again, both on the inside pass rush as well as his outside edge position. And again, they were like, he's looking good, he's looking sharp, and going, that's what we want to hear. We need it. We need a healthy and ready to go Cam, especially if he's going to be pulling double duty like that. Um, Also a bump on Christian Boyd because and I yes, there somebody had posted a Twitter one-on-one, but mentioned that he looked good in the one-on-ones and he was showing just a strong physical push up field. Because I remember on that clip, that's exactly what he did. I didn't see the number or the player that was in front of him, but it was a with big, huge, strong men like he is, a defensive tackle Duke. They pushed that way. So he got a great push upfield and knocked his guy back. And that's what you need to see out of that. The other guy that actually may have been the defense player today, and DA talked about him a little bit in press conference, was linebacker Anthony Orji. And his name has been popping up occasionally, practices, mentions every now and then when they start posting all the little shorts and Twitter clips of guys. He does show up there sometimes. He does show up there sometimes. So he's been turning heads. Second year guy. Um, it sounds like he's making a push to if they're going to take six linebackers or more, and I'm assuming it's at least six. Don't quite know how the final number is going to come out, but it looks like he may be grabbing a spot. He's doing his best to do it. DA, like I said, DA had some very good things to say about Anthony Orji. So let's talk a little bit about what DA had to say. And again, talking about the stacking injury issue and the need to go get Nakua to add in yet another wide receiver to help out because that room is getting so thin. The other two things he kind of mentioned right off the bat was today was a lot of red zone work, which I already mentioned, and how that kind of evolved to the offense starting slow, but then kind of gaining their footing and their traction or whatever, however you want to put it. But basically asserting themselves, going, no, this is not going to be the fourth day in a row where we're taking it on the chin. Fought back a little bit. Um, the refs, I shouldn't say the refs. Some refs were in attendance at practice today for the first time because traditionally in training camp they'll get referees in there to start calling potential fouls. Which Da made a point of reference to say that I walked up and told them full well if they say anything that they see anything that's a foul, throw the flag. Let us know during the drill or whatever's going on, so that our coaches can jump in there and correct it. And good. Thinking Da, yeah, that I don't. I'm hoping you had been doing that, but if you hadn't been, that might explain a little bit some of the penalty issues we had over the last few years. So, but hopefully corrective action on all that, because that is one thing that doesn't really get talked about is we had some serious penalty issues in some games last year that cost us dearly. So hopefully next 3 days, because they'll be on Saturday and Sunday's practice, the refs will be there. They can get some work done on that where corrections can be made and adjustments made. And so none of that trickles into the regular season, hopefully. Um, obviously that we talked about Holker possibly being the guy of the day in the whole entire training camp. He was brought up, and it was eerily similar to what DA was talking about yesterday, the tight end room without Jawan Johnson. Hey, the only known thing we have is Foster Moreau, and Hoker was the only other one he mentioned by name because of what he can do in the passing game. Um, so it was a very similar comment to that, except he kind of went in a little deeper, and he actually said, "Look, he doesn't have a real super elite skill set," which kind of Clancy Barone, when Barone was talking about him in OTAs, kind of made it sound like he did. But either way, they both acknowledged that it was acknowledged by DA like it was Barone in OTAs was no, we had our eye on him and we really wanted to draft him and quite surprised when he wasn't drafted and we went hard and undrafted free agency period to right after the draft to go ahead and reel him in. But DA said what he does exceptionally well. Um, Talking about he's a very savvy football player. He says he's got a lot of football IQ, intelligence, and but kind of also, I guess, a feel is what he was describing because he was basically talking about like he picks up real quick in the passing game, like the soft spot areas in the zone, and can settle in there and does a lot of. Um, Da didn't exactly say this, but I'm kind of inferring what he was talking about is a lot of that nuances at the position that because typically tight ends is a hard adjustment in the NFL. You rarely it does happen, but you rarely see like rookie tight ends showing up and blowing up. It normally takes them a little bit, a year or so, maybe two in some cases. But then once they've got it, and they become very good. But it's almost sounding like some of that stuff, he's a little ahead of the curve in the pass game, which very well may be what Clancy Barone likes so much also going, yeah, he knows some stuff that I don't necessarily have to teach and we can work on the other stuff. Um, but he did mention he's got to get better in the blocking game. We need more out of him from that, which I'm kind of laughing, going, well, he was chirped up in the press about having two really, really nice blocks today. So um I don't know if that was just maybe DA going, hey, I don't want him getting a big head because yeah, he had two nice blocks today. But the reoccurring theme from DA lately has been we need to see more. We need that bigger jump. So um Alontae Taylor, who spoke afterwards, and we'll talk a little bit about what he had to say. But really, and it kind of echoes what DA said. Taylor followed up on. Um, But DA was like really impressed in everything he did in the offseason to get better because he says looking comfortable. He's really embraced that slot role and not worried so much. Am I going to be an outside corner, an inside corner? DA's like, I don't want to deal with all that. In this offseason, he kind of really embraced the role, worked hard with Joe Woods to get to where he felt comfortable. And he talked specifically about that a little later. And DA finally, this may be one, and this is important because I've really grown over the last 3 years. So it's not that I never disliked Delonte. I thought he was a really good, but now I'm really buying into. I've said before, he could be on the verge of making a third year jump into an elite type player. More on that later. Um, but DA, he literally said leaps and bounds, improved leaps and bounds over last season. The last few days, he's been talking about these guys. Look, they have slow, steady progress or some progress. I want to see huge progress, big jumps of progress from these guys. He kind of, in a way, just admitted that he's seen it in Taylor. That's a positive, great sign. Um, and then Anthony Orji, who we mentioned, a lot of people said he might have been the defensive guy of the training camp. Um, Da talked about him. Apparently, always an athletic guy. And Da said that's what caught our eye last year on his college tape. And hey, we really want to bring this guy in. He's in. And he said he's made significant improvement in the offseason. And he said what Da said has caught Da's attention is being so much further along than he was last year is like all that athletic ability they saw in his college tape is showing up. And apparently that's what a lot of the media is seeing, going, man, this guy's having a really, really good camp. Um, and what's really interesting, because they asked him, well, what positions is he playing? And DA's kind of like, Oh, all of them. In fact, today he worked as the on the ball Sam. He worked in the middle and then he worked on the weak side. That's pretty much all our spots. And DA did say, look, versatility and ability to make special teams is going to help anybody make this the 53 man. And I'm going, well, it seems like Origin is, I mean, 8 practices in, still have a long way to go, but um, he may be on his way to jumping on one of those 53 roster spots. Definitely somebody to keep an eye on. And DA kind of wrapped him up saying, look, he really understands now everything that's going on, and he's basically playing faster without thinking. And DA was like, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the guy he was in college when he was basically playing fast and not thinking, and we saw all his athletic ability. That's finally shown up this year. Also had a little talk about Peyton Turner, which is basically based on it's like DA's like, yeah, consistency. Right now, consistently healthy. And I don't mean that in a snarky way. It's absolutely true. And knock on wood, we need to keep him consistently healthy. But DA's going, that's the biggest jump he's making. He's out there every day getting the work in. And again, another one going that when he's getting the work in, we can start seeing some of the things we saw in when we drafted him and wanting that to translate on the field. Um, so he said that's the biggest thing. He said because without and he kept calling it consistency, and I'm thinking it's really what you're really talking about here is availability. So without him being available for every single practice to work on getting better and the consistency in his play and learning everything he needs to learn, because he still almost potentially feels like a babe in the woods. DA even mentioned he was like, man, he was balling great in that Tennessee game last year in the opener, and then he got hurt. And that's just kind of been the story of his career. Um, and I don't know honestly if any of us has ever seen him enough in game to know in game action enough to know what he really has. But they seem to think if they can keep him on the field, he's going to show to everybody what they saw in him all along. We'll see. Um, next up was Isaiah Foskey, and I loved his like kind of opening. And when he was talking to the media, he's like, "Oh man, I'm just trying to keep stacking plays." Basically saying, "Look, I'm trying to make a big play every day, every chance I get. Just keep stacking them up." And talking about, well, yeah, basically that's turning heads. One way to turn heads, I guess. So um, he's. They asked him. He said, "Well, we'll have kind of a." I couldn't hear the question, but it was something about a bad day, and he said, "Yeah, I had one bad day." Um, but then he took it on himself. So like, but that was on me. I didn't prep the right way. So I had a bad day. It led to me having a bad practice, and so I learned from that and I moved on. He's very much focused. It sounds like in a lot of the mental stuff that got him last year that he admitted in his OTA little Q&A with the press. All the foibles that went on last year for him outside of the injuries he had, which he also said that was partly on me because I didn't prepare right for the season. So I just didn't work out for him on many levels. But he's in the buy-in mode and he's in the work hard mode and he's in the learn mode. Um, because what he's saying right now, I need to get my pass rush better. It kind of echoing what Dennis Allen was saying. It's like, look, he's progressed, but now he's got to get better. We've got to see what we know is in him. He went into a little technical and all of the pass rush kind of techniques, 4-eye and 9-eye and all. Which I'm not really sure what he's talking about, to be honest with you. But it generally gives you the impression that what he's saying is because I'm working on my pass rush, all this technique, and assuming a lot of that wide 9 he mentioned, which I kind of know what that is. It's a lining up way wide in the 9 gap. Kind of I think that's kind of maybe what he's talking about is not only do I have to get my pass rush better, but I'm going to be moving around as linemen do, especially in this defense, and I got to learn how to play in all those spots and learn technique in all those spots and learn how to get to the quarterback in all those spots. Because he said last year, they asked him, well, what do you think about the pass rush this year compared to last year? And he said, just kind of looking at it last year, at times we were able to affect the quarterback. in essence, get close to him, make him uncomfortable, maybe move him off his spot. But we didn't get him on the ground. We didn't get the sacks we should have gotten. And he said, so that's important. You still want to keep that. We got to affect the quarterback and do all that stuff, but we got to close the deal. We got to get to him. We got to put him on the ground. I think that's a reoccurring theme throughout the defensive line by uh, every Saints fan, coach, player, front office personnel, owner, everybody's going, yes, we've got to get more sacks. We've got to get more big plays out of the defensive line. And what I really liked about what he was talking about towards the end about just trying to learn everything he can from Chase Young, because he said, I realized Chase Young is like a hand technician. He's so great with using his hands and using moves off of what he can do with his hands. He basically said he shadows Chase Young throughout all practice. He's like, man, I'm always next to him. I'm trying to get in his ear. I want to learn everything. I want to watch everything he does. I want to, kind of soak it in. And he even mentioned, he said, sometimes I don't even think he notices I'm standing next to me while I'm just trying to learn whatever I can learn from an elite pass rusher. And I'm like, it's getting to the point. I hope it's right. I hope all the stuff that went bad for Foskey last year has been fixed and he has the ability to get out there and make some points. Because just every time I hear him talk, I can't feel anything, but I'm really pulling hard for this guy to really come through and have a big year. And not just because I'm a Saints fan and I want them all to have the big year so we can win and win the Super Bowl, although that is a huge part of it. But one of the guys, I am really liking him and want to see him succeed because of the person that you kind of seeing that's been through all this and trying to, in a weird way, kind of an underdog story. So hope it all works out for Isaiah for everybody involved this year, and he does show up on that edge and becomes one of the guys, the next guy in the system that's going to roll up the chain towards being a great defensive lineman. Um, and then Alontae Taylor came on, and right off the bat, I'm just kind of mirroring back to a little bit about what Dennis Allen was saying. Well, look, like don't worry about outside corner, inside slot, nickel. Would it just you're basically your defensive back, embrace it all. Um, and also to something that Da said a few practices ago about when they were talking about leadership and like Honey Badger being the leader that may not be noticed because he may not be as vocal as Demario or Cam can be, but how he can get into those young players' ears and whisper into them a little bit and give them some guidance and some insight. And apparently Alontae Taylor was one of them because he acknowledged something when Honey Badger was going to his third year that an older player, veteran player told him was, look, it's just basically year 3 is the year to put it all together. And kind of just telling him, look, this is it. This is the make or break year for most NFL players. This is their third year. And I'm like, yeah, you kind of hear that a lot. Um, so it's embrace everything was his, don't worry about outside and inside and all that. And Taylor basically was saying, well yeah, I kind of did that. I worked hard all off season with Joe Woods. Um, Started feeling comfortable. He's like, and the more comfortable I felt, and the more I'm learning, and the more work doing into OTAs in the training camp, he said, being an outside corner, I already know what the corners were doing. He said, now I'm comfortable on the inside, and I'm knowing what the linebackers are doing. Um, so I'm getting the playbook down. So I understand everything going on around me that level, regardless if it's inside and outside, which has given me the leverage to play better. And he said, I just finally decided not, am I a nickel corner? Am I an outside corner? Whatever. He actually said, he says, I'm a DB at this point, and if they want me to play nickel corner, I want to be the best nickel corner there is, and if they want me to play outside, I'm going to be the best outside. I want to be the best outside corner there is. So really, kind of tapping into going embracing this. Yes, you are a defensive back. It doesn't matter where they put me. I'm just going to go out. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to play it hard, and I'm going to go make plays. And he is a guy in the first 2 years that when every when everything's going good, when he especially that first year when he was on the outside where he was really, really comfortable, he can make plays and he can step up the level of that 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 defensive back room as a whole, and especially in the corners and the ability to play inside and outside. And the last thing he really said was the biggest thing that he's working on is like, I just want to get better every single day. And I'm hearing that a lot, hoping the players and the coaches for that matter, because a lot of them have to get better every single day, probably if not all of them. But hoping there's a really buy-in that's true, and that's really what's going on here. So that's kind of the wrap up for day 8, so to speak. I Just a conclusion I'm drawing. I'm kind of really maybe I kind of got really nervous and did the video on the offensive line after everything here and then seeing as more and more video came out going, "Yeesh, Lord." So I'm really hoping that, like I said, all reports coming in from lots of people saying better day for the offensive line, and it gradually improved as the day went on. So I'm hoping to see confirmation of that. I'm sure I will because I don't think they'd make that up. Um, so it would make me feel a little more comfortable than necessarily I was like 16 hours ago or 18 hours ago. Um, but I still need to see more that offensive line. I need to see more than just some footage of our first round pick make winning some big one on ones, especially one against Chase Young. Need to see them all. Just kind of get involved in that. But the main thing I'm talking here is just recognizing we still have a long way to go to get this all to work out, and there's going to be an ebb and flow involved. So just may have to take it not so much day by day with a grain of salt, but maybe give it a stretch of days before you're going, is it a concern or is it not? So if you agree with that, give me the thumbs up. Just we may have to be a little more patient, I guess is what I'm saying, than we want to be because we want to know now how all this is going to turn out. And we might just have to wait till the end of August, beginning of September. Ah, so go ahead and let me know what you think in the comments, and say if you first time here, please go ahead and hit the subscribe, hit the notifications, and pop in. We do some stuff. You'll be notified. You can come in, watch, participate, leave comments along with everybody else. So till we see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out. Who dat?